Well, thanks, Roxanne. That was wonderful to hear the presentation and some of that background that goes with welcoming immigrant populations to our community. My focus this afternoon is a little bit more about the narrative of a community, a rural community, that has experienced a lot of immigration and a lot of work with families as they move into our community. My name is Kathleen Jensen. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Grasslands Public Schools. And I've been part of a Brooks community for most of my life, and I've spent my career as a teacher and an administrator in the schools and a system leader now in the public system. My grandparents, as you mentioned, everybody has somebody who's come as a pioneer before them. My grandparents were pioneers to the area when the CPR opened up land for homesteaders. So everybody has that story. My husband is a high school principal, and our 3 children are graduates of the public school system. And now 2 of them are teachers in our system. So having that, yes, they want to be in the system. They realize the valuable work that we do. Brooks is a great place to live, and I'm so glad that my children were fortunate enough to be raised in such a diverse community. The world opened up for them, and in the small city, and they're better citizens because of that, and I really believe that. Brooks is called the City of 100 Hellos. I haven't actually counted them, but I know that that's what we're called, and I haven't tried it out on anybody. But that was the name of a documentary that was done in our community in 2011. It speaks of the growing pains and the joys of a community that's changing, and we're learning as we're going through this journey. One of our main employers is a meatpacking plant. We have a job market for people from all around the world, and they can come to us with very little English, and they're able to find work. It's not necessarily the easiest work, but it's work for them. It's a draw for temporary foreign workers, as you mentioned, refugees, and immigration from many countries. Brooks began as an agricultural community in 1910, so we're a little over 100 years old. Farming and ranching is in an irrigated oasis, and that's a real draw for settlers from the United States and Canada. With the oil boom in the 70s, our city experienced rapid growth and young demographic of the oil workers. So it wasn't the families that came, but we had a very young demographic in our community. Then with the opening of the meatpacking plant, our city grew with workers from around the world. The families, again, did not come right away. We had fathers and mothers coming and then sponsoring and bringing families. Then our school system, that's when we noticed. We began to experience the growth of many students and many nationalities. So what does that look like in our schools? Some of our schools are at 25 to 30% English language learners. About 12% of our high school population is comprised of students who are refugees now and have had little or no schooling in their first language. With a total population of 3,700 students in our district, it's a relatively small district. It's pretty interesting to visit our urban schools and experience a rich mix of our student population. So on any given day, you can find Ethiopian students, Eritrean, Sudanese, Somalian, Nigerian, Liberian, Congolese, Chinese, Indian, Afghani, Iraqi, Pakistani, Filipino, Colombian, and Mexican. And there are more. Yeah. They are Christian, they are Muslim, they are Sikh, Hindu, and Buddhist. Their parents come with no education, and they come with university degrees. And they come from refugee camps, and they come from cities, and they come from farms. So we have the whole gamut. They come from countries at war, and some of the stories they tell are horrific, and they're heartbreaking. So, as Roxanne mentioned, we've been looking at this with our Syrian refugees coming in. It's often referred to as a crisis or an issue for us. So let's talk about the crisis and the issues that have faced our schools in the last 15 years and how we've managed to navigate through the territory. So let's look at the words, I guess. Crisis and issue, what does that mean? And as long as we continue to use words in that context, We only look inward at the impact on us in our learning community, and then you prepare for the worst instead of the positive. So you prepare for a negative context as opposed to a rich context. So in the news, we hear that word crisis. We need to remind ourselves it's the refugees. They are in crisis, not us. And they are not an issue. They're just new students to the school, and we need to view them just as that. And I don't mean to trivialize the work that comes with meeting the needs of these students, academic and social, and Roxanne spoke about that. It's all of it. It's not just learning the language. The day-to-day work of meeting the diverse students is very complex. And every teacher in Alberta, they're continually expanding their teaching toolbox to meet those needs. Let's look at the word hospitality instead of the word crisis and issue. So if we look at a change and we focus on a different word, maybe it puts us into a different context for understanding our approach. So what do we mean by hospitality, and how do we as communities, entire communities, not just a school community, welcome the stranger? How do we as a community affirm and support newcomers when we do not completely understand their story or their needs? And how do we ask the right questions so that we can seek to understand? I just put this information in because with the United Nations Refugee Commission, there was some really good work done here with faith communities. And I think even though this is done with faith communities, it applies to communities in general and the work that we need to do to understand. Just a little bit of background on that. In December 2012, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Antonio Guterres, organized a dialogue with faith leaders, faith-based humanitarian organizations, academics, and government representatives from countries around the world on the theme of faith and protection. As the High Commissioner noted in his opening remarks, all major religious value systems embrace humanity, caring and respect, and the tradition of granting protection to those in danger. The principles of modern refugee law have their oldest roots in these ancient texts and traditions. So as a result, in April 2013, a coalition of leading faith-based humanitarian organizations and academic institutions encompassing religious organizations of every faith. So they came up with, drafted a Welcoming the Stranger affirmations for faith leaders, which is something that everybody can look as affirmations for a community. They've been translated in Arabic, Chinese, French, Hebrew, Russian, and Spanish, and they inspire leaders of all faiths to welcome the stranger with dignity, respect, and loving support. So if we frame it in that context as the United Nations frames it, then a community can welcome these students to our community. So, given that, what do we need, or what does the English language learner need, and what does a refugee student need in particular? And we all know they need to get the language. Everybody needs to get the language, the English language, as quickly as they can. They need it so that they can move forward. And then they need to fill in the missing gaps. If they have missing gaps in their education, we need to find a way that we can move them forward. But more importantly, they need to feel that they belong, that they're welcomed, that we care for them, and that they're valued. Not just that they're welcomed, but that they're valued, and that they're in a learning environment that's safe and that it's caring. And then you find the ways to build that around them. So what does this look like in Brooks and in Grasslands? I recently sat in on an OECD webinar that outlined statistics regarding successful immigration and educational strategies for success. And one of the biggest statements that resonated with me was the culture and the education acquired before migrating have an impact on student performance. So we look at the country of origin and we say, yes, that's going to impact. But what they said, the country where students settle matters more. So the environment where we welcome them to matters more than where they came from. So that puts the emphasis back to us. Canada was identified as a country with good immigration policies and social systems that were successful for enhancing first-generation success for immigrant students. So we have what we need to make this work for our students. So our community and our school district, we evolved together to best support our population. So we look at our system not as K to 12, but we look at it as birth to 20. We know we don't start at kindergarten, we start before and we extend. We know it as a system, we must look at both ends of the spectrum to best enhance early learning, and high school completion is vital and preparation for the adult world. If we don't provide early intervention or we fail at the other end to finish the high school process, we know we're putting our students at a disadvantage. So I'm going to use a story because I taught language arts in junior high, and then I went back to elementary and had fun stories like stone soup. So we're going to look at a story of stone soup to illustrate how our community of Brooks and our district have approached challenges. So a little bit about the story, and you probably know it. The story opens with strangers coming to visit a town, and all they bring is a soup pot and a stone. So everybody hides in their home. The villagers suspicious. What are they doing here? What do they have, and what do they want from us? So they hide in their homes, and then in the process, the strangers begin to make the soup. And of course, the villagers come out to see what's going on. And it gets better and better as each villager comes out and contributes to the soup, because they know that by adding something to it, of course, it's going to get better. At the end, of course, the soup is delicious, and the best part of this, the village sits down together, and they enjoy the soup. The hospitality and the sharing of resources of everyone is a great model to use for any community. So as a school district, what do? We work together with the community to connect them with our school. We find that as soon as we link and we partner with agencies, we accomplish a great deal more, and we get a better understanding of each other's roles. We no longer work in isolation as different agencies. There's no magic or perfect program. We don't have anything that's magic or that works for everyone. So every community develops their own set of agencies or what works for them. We just link services, and then we build on strengths in our community. So let's start at that birth to 20. What happens for early intervention? As I said, it's so vitally important. The earlier we intervene and the longer we can keep our students, we know they'll be successful and connected. So we work through Child and Family Services. We support a Parents as Teachers program in our district. They support parents at home with home visits, and then they connect parents to other agencies, and they get support for their children as soon as they're born. So they don't provide the only support, but they link them then and provide those home visits that work so well. Our Parent Link Center offers home instruction for parents of preschool youngsters, and it's got a great name, Hippie. And it's through the Immigration Services, but it's a great program to support and include mothers. So again, having the mothers as part of that education, drawing them in. Then literacy, of course. If your whole school division doesn't have a literacy focus, and it's not just for our new students coming in, it's for everybody. Then you have the excellent reading and language interventions, and the gap closes for language acquisition. So as part of that, we specifically have a literacy coordinator in our district, and working with all of our schools to support teachers and students. So one of the highlights each year, we do a literacy fair. And again, it's that community gathering together. So it's not about the booths or learning, it's the community gathers together, and we celebrate with a meal, and we have performances, and we have community booths. So it's a community gathering, but we support the language and we support our families as part of that. So what happens in those dreaded middle years? We've got the cute little kids speaking the language and moving forward. What happens in those middle years? And here is where we really focus a bit more probably on the social aspects of supporting students. And positive mental health strategies. And we looked at, when we say mental health strategies, we mean strategies for every student. We don't mean just for a particular group of students, but we mean for all students. So we have a wonderful mental health capacity building project and that supports families and schools. So then we put universal supports into our classrooms, programs such as Roots of Empathy and BrainWise and any program that supports the specific needs of what's been identified. We've also been learning a lot lately about trauma and its effect on our students. As you mentioned, I'm amazed how resilient our students are. The students come in, they look happy, they seem well adjusted, they're engaged, and they love to come to school. That is never a problem. They want to be in school. But you see the faces of the parents, and that's where you see the trauma. That's where you see the trauma. And it is so difficult, as you said, for them to move forward, and they want the best for their students. And the parents suffer financially as well. We have a parent who would work the day shift, and then we have one working the night shift, so that you have a parent at home to support their children. So then you connect the kids too, and helping financially. So we access Jumpstart program through Canadian Tire. That gets the kids out, and it's another partnership then. So our community supports that really well. And our City of Brooks as well supports with free leisure passes for our students. So we want them active, we want them engaged in the community as well. We also feed them. We know if we're not feeding them, they're not going to be at their best. And it's just a fact of life. It's just the way it is. So through the mental health capacity building, we do health lunch programs in all our city schools. And the important part is no questions asked. And if you're hungry, you eat. There's no stigma to accessing food. So it's not provided for a specific group. It's provided for everyone. And it's a no-fuss system. Again, if you can't do this with no fuss, it's not going to move forward. So we do it through donations and staff at the school. And then working with trauma, we look back to when we had our flood-affected students from the Siksika and supporting them. And what we realized right away, and you said this is long-term work, they don't even begin to realize till 5 or 7 years later that they have mental health needs. They're so busy working on the basic needs that we just provide that and support and care until they're ready. Then we can address some of those more major, the major trauma, and then it goes a long way towards healing and restoration to the community. So it's long-term, for sure. High school is where it gets fun, but it gets scary for our kids who come in. And there's nothing, it's, when those students walk in and they're 16 years old or they're 18 years old and they're coming as refugees with no language and they're coming with no education, how do we make them feel welcome? They're only there for a short time, and we know the longer we keep them, the better it's going to be. And we know if we can keep them for 5 more years, that they're doing very well and they go to post-secondary and everything, then they move forward. And then we always celebrate their accomplishments at our award ceremonies. And our goal then, if we need time, we try to stretch time for them. And at a certain point, they're no longer funded through the system. But so as we borrowed from Calgary Public, we borrowed from Calgary Catholic, all across the province. We borrow, we find the things that work or what works for our students. So we put courses into place and then try to get everybody into mainstream as soon as possible because we know that they need to integrate with the other students. One of our students I know we have working a 40-hour work week at the plant, but he's still at school every day. So he's determined, as you said, he's 18, but he's determined to do both. And they persist, and they get that, and it's the English 30-2 and then the social 30-2, but they need to get through that, and they persist. So our district is committed to funding some of our overage students because we know that one course they might need to take over. They might need some more support. So when we get to those graduation ceremonies, it's pretty cool to watch them as they are celebrating, and it's, again, just a part of their long journey. We call it their long journey. So what's next for us? This has been a focus, and we talked about this in the new impact of the Syrian refugee families. I look at Europe and I go, I don't know, with the massive numbers, I think that's a crisis. I think, how do you do that? Those are huge. Those numbers are huge. Our numbers aren't going to be that huge. They're going to be some, and some districts are going to get more. But they already have good things in place, and we have good things in place. So looking at sheer numbers, I don't think that's the impact. I don't think for most communities in Alberta, it's going to be so overwhelming that we can't do it. And then you get used to that ebb and flow of the students entering your system, and then it gets to be a business as usual. It's what you do. It's what you do. And then we continue to learn, and then we continue to grow. So one of the comments as people have been walking through some of our schools, or visitors coming through, they go, they're looking for, maybe there's something that's discordant or isn't working because of the diversity in there. And they come away, and I've heard the comment made, your schools are very peaceful places. And you think, well, shouldn't they be? We should expect that our schools are very peaceful places. And we know our students have been, they're used to diversity. We have to give our young people credit. Sometimes our adults are the ones who are not used to the diversity, but our students are. And we know all the way along they've been taught caring values, accepting people for who they are, and the richness that they bring to the stone soup. So that's I guess that'll continue to be our focus. It's nothing different, it's just more, and continuing along the way. And so that's our community, and that's what we have done, and it is not perfect by any means. But it's as we say, we're growing, we're learning. So I thank you for your time. I invite you to come visit Brooks sometimes. It's a lovely little city, and you'll get 100 hellos, and probably just as many smiles, as you can see from those kids. They're wonderful kids, so thank you.
Can you tell me more about the Parents as Teachers program? I'm not familiar with that.
It is a program that comes out of the States, and it's used, Lethbridge uses it, a variety of communities use it. And there's a curriculum that goes, but it's basically just people visiting the home, sitting with parents, teaching the kids how to play, how to communicate, and then connect moms. So you connect moms to an agency, you connect moms to a school. You bring, if they're early English language learners, you say, oh, we have something that we can work with. Then they're comfortable. So as soon as we've had that warm visit in the home, and we start right at birth. So that warm visit then, and then they can be self-referred, agency referred, but they don't do all the work, but they just visit and then get them connected. So it works really well.